My sisters and brothers, good morning. Today's readings speak to us of the promise of God as liberator, one who proclaims liberty to captives and lets the oppressed go free, a God who breaks the bonds of slavery and leads us into the freedom of the children of God. Now, God did not make us for slavery to sin, but invites us to that freedom and newness of life. I think it's common for many of us to think of the invitation of Jesus, for God's invitation, to be burdensome, that discipleship has so many rules that we have to follow. Wouldn't it just be easier if I could do whatever I wanted? Wouldn't that be more enjoyable? But that's the lie, that's the deception of sin, and it's an insidious deception at that. The allure of sin seems to entice us into doing whatever we want, but then we get trapped. We're burdened, we're oppressed by the shame of the sin, by habits and vices that we can't seem to liberate ourselves from. But God cares too deeply. God cares far too much to let us languish in our sinful habits or to continue carrying on these burdens of shame and sin. As we hear in the readings today, God has seen the plight of his people in slavery, those who are oppressed. He looks through eyes of compassion and mercy and love and declares, I am concerned about you and the way that you are being treated. So I have decided to lead you up out of the misery into a promised land flowing with milk and honey. Now, the slavery and oppression of Egypt in the book of Exodus was a literal slavery, an oppression of an entire people by a great and powerful nation. Similar forms of oppression and injustice indeed persist today and require liberation. The Egypts of old are unfortunately pervasive in our present day. But I would suggest for our prayer today, for you to take a moment to look into your own heart and into your own spiritual life. Where are the Egypts of my life, of my heart and mind, which need that liberation and healing that God is promising? How is God inviting me to greater freedom, leading me through a wilderness into a promised land? Now, it's a common trope in the Bible to describe sin as a burden, a slavery, an oppression. It's a heavy weight that each of us carries, and the burden weighs us down, a crushing yoke that subjects us to these painful vices and habits that we do not wish to do. And sometimes we feel trapped, helpless to escape from cycles of shame and sin. So in your own life, is there any anger or resentment, self-centeredness and selfishness? Are we not all perhaps afraid of something? Sin and shame, vices and habits that we just wish we could leave behind. So what burdens and traps you? Where is there slavery to sin and oppression in your own life? Take a moment. Turn to God, the liberator. Turn to Jesus, who wishes to heal, who wishes to shatter that burden. And do not be afraid. As Jesus says, be fearless and honest with the Lord, who is meek and humble of heart, not condemnatory or judgmental. I am meek and humble of heart. I will not cast you away. Draw near to me, Jesus invites us, for my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Jesus did, after all, inaugurate his public ministry by announcing that he came to proclaim liberty to captives and to let the oppressed go free when he read from the scroll of the prophet Isaiah in his own hometown. We are invited out of the slavery of sin into the freedom of the children of God, to be let free, to be liberated by Jesus. One of my favorite psalms celebrates this liberation and freedom that's wrought by the hands of God, these wonderful deeds that God has done for us, recalling, the Lord became my protector. He brought me out to a place of freedom. He saved me because he loved me. He delighted in me. God delights in and loves you fiercely, so much so that he promises to bring you out to a place of freedom, led through a wilderness and into the promised land, to rest. Yes, to rest peacefully next to the meek and humble heart of the Lord himself.